Welcome back to another Thursday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your Thursday host, Yeka, and this week we are talking about um, the connection between the emotional, spiritual, physical, and bringing those together as a whole and looking at them also as separate aspects. So, our question comes from Kristen, who writes, the connection between emotional slash spiritual slash physical aspects of your practices, little ways you connect them or compartmentalize them. So I think this is a really cool topic that has got me thinking about it all week. And it's a big focus, or really the main focus for me in my personal channel, which I'm not as good at putting videos up as often as I'd like, but that's magic and mundane, and really looking at the union of those, right? And for me, I think being the big theme about being a pagan is trying to recognize my part as part of the natural world, as not a human on this planet, but an animal who is part of this planet. As and within that context, trying to live as present, mindful, and joyful life as possible within that. Um, so I think that this idea of having both looking at things from sort of this broader systems approach and broken down um, unit focused in approach, looking at both the forest and the tree, can be really helpful. An expression which we've all heard. I haven't gotten a chance to watch the other hosts' videos. I bet they've probably brought this one up already, anyways. Is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But even so, the system doesn't work with just one piece, and you can't understand the system with just one piece. You need to look at everything, or one does. Um, but that being said, breaking them into sort of more manageable categories can really help. And I think one of the things that I try and do is use those smaller categories, which are kind of the categories themselves are rather arbitrary, not random, but arbitrary, because they really do all blend into each other. But you can create categories that are a little bit more easy to think about. Um, Focus on that, and then periodically step back and look at it as it connects and relates to everything else in the system. So I think I'm trying to not talk in circles with this, so I want to bring in a personal example, which is kind of part of the question, which is asking about our practices, and bring something up which is very immediate and how I might approach this and how I do approach this, which at the moment is dinner. We have dinner. I'm going to go inside after this, and dinner has been going in the slow cooker for hours since early this morning, and I'm getting quite hungry, so I'm looking forward to that. And what we have going right now is a roast, and that has some of our bull Brady, as well as carrots, onions, garlic from the garden. And let me step back and say, so we have a bull, um, obviously a dead bull, that my family, there's 4 different households of my family that live here in the area, and 3 of us went in together, my side of the family, went in together for a bull. Um, and that, I mean, that's hundreds of pounds of meat and tendon and bones for each family, um, that really will last us the whole year, and it's awesome. It's a good 25 to 30% of our caloric needs are met by this, and this is something I want to share with you because this is very sacred for us. It's really important to me, and a very important part of my practice is this connection that we have with our food. And so that's why we actually gave our bull a name. And we know the ranch. Actually, I spent quite a bit of time on the ranch that he came from. We met him before. Um, and is, delicious and all of that. But, I know that different people have different choices that they make with that, so this isn't a video about trying to convince you to do my choice or not. I'm just explaining how I use this, looking at um, the whole within pieces of it and then adding those together to see the whole system. So if we use the examples that Kristen gave us of looking at the physical, emotional, and spiritual, I might step back and look at this from the physical perspective, which is really the easiest way to look at it and go, okay, so dinner, right? From my practice on a physical level, I need to eat. I need to feed my family. It's important to, I look at it from the micronutrients, from the fat profile, from all of that. I go, okay, well, I know that I'm going to be out in the field tomorrow, so I need to have a really good meal that's going to sustain me, that's going to help keep me, um, you know, able to be present with whatever I'm doing, not thinking about food all the time or being uncomfortable or something like that. Our daughter is growing very quickly and needs a lot more food proportionally, for her body size than we as adults do. I need to make sure that I'm giving her the best, most nutrient dense stuff I can. Again, this kind of starts to bleed into the different topics, so where you draw the line is kind of up to you, of the emotional. If we're not well fed and not getting our physical needs met, that influences the emotional needs. Um, and of course, not to mention that it's a big, doing it this way is an investment up front, but a big money saver too. So the financial, or just your one's resources, whether those are financial or not, are a physical thing. They could, of course, be in the other categories as well, but that has a huge impact on, just the overall, well-being. So emotionally, it's a big deal for us because there is that, well, there's eating together as a family, that bonding, that connection that you have, or one can have. Tying back to a topic we did a few months ago with ancestors, the recipes that I use are ones that have been used for generations, for hundreds of years, and the connection between, where this particular bowl comes from is actually a ranch right by where I was born, the land that I'm from, the pride and beautiful connection of growing part of the food yourself. I planted those carrot seeds and I harvested them, and the same thing, with the garlic and all of that. So there's that joy and that connection that comes, which is a really important part of an overall practice, is the emotional elements of that. And this one, the emotional and the spiritual, are the ones that for me blend together the most. Well, I guess they all kind of blend together, but it's often very difficult to define what spiritual is. And so I think in this context, I've been talking about it as sort of where we find meaning in all of it. And that's, I guess, there's a lot of that for me with this, because if I believe that something is sacred, which I believe that the land is sacred, I believe that the soil, the ecosystems are sacred. I believe that the human systems within that, the human connections and economies and all of that are part of this larger whole. Then I need to do my best to protect that and to interact with it in the healthiest way I can, and in a way that, that is regenerative, that is healing and positive. So making the choice to to buy and eat, a local grass-fed bull from a farm or a ranch that I know is doing wonderful things for the ecosystem that it is a member and a part of. I know that the species diversity is going up, the overall biomass is increasing, the soil is getting better. These are documented pieces of evidence that we have. If I see that, it's I feel like I have a responsibility to be a part of that and to choose to be a part of that rather than, you know, my calories have to come from somewhere. And they could come from there, or I could make a different choice. And an example would be I could just go to the grocery store and buy a package of some sort of protein stuff that was grown somewhere and that I don't know. Um, it could be, for instance, if I was going to use like a soy product that was probably, because the vast majority of soy is grown in a monoculture situation, which has eliminated the other competition, the ecosystem that it's a part of, and very, very problematic. Not to say that there aren't other options, but that I want to be very conscious with what that is. And I think it's really important to take, by making a choice like this, we're just talking about what somebody eats for dinner. I am choosing to take full responsibility. I am being fully intentional. This was a creature who I met. I looked him in the eyes and I knew that this was somebody who, for the next year, was going to be part of me. I was going to cut up and cook and make part of my family, feed to my family many days of the week. And it was very, make sure that was intentional and make sure that I knew what I was doing in a loving and compassionate way, and going, I am part of this world and I have to eat no matter what. That is the basis of being part of this world, is this continual flow of of stuff, of elements of nature, of energy from one into another. And being conscious in that process is really, really important for me on that level. And it's part of that, of the great cycle of the birth, growth, death, decay, and then that regeneration that comes from it. And knowing that, I was part of that cycle of the energy coming from the sun to the grass that was aided by the soil, to the cattle, so into the bull, into me, and continuing. So, that's a little bit of soul bear in there for you folks, but bringing it back, that's just a specific example for us because it's very immediate. I'm hungry, and that was a choice that, talking about about the different parts of looking at a whole system within the practice and connecting that supposedly mundane with how I live, and bringing that all together. But I think that this, and I think about that a lot, not just because I like to eat, but because I am an agro and range ecologist, and so that's part of my job in the world, which was of course influenced by my beliefs as a pagan. But this is an approach that can be used on anything, looking at those small pieces, putting them together, looking at them as a whole, and going, okay, so here's the physical, and the physical is blending into the emotional, and emotional to the spiritual, and looking at all of that together. This is something that could be done, which I do for everything from meditation practices to gardening to interpersonal relationships with family members, co-workers, spouses, etc. So I hope that was helpful or useful in some way. It's a really cool topic. I would love to hear from all of you if this is a kind of process you use in your practice, if you break things apart to look at them as in small parts and then also look at their interconnection as a whole. Let us know in the in the comments below. And then also, I think next week is subs week, and we're getting up pretty close to our the collaborative's anniversary, so we'll see what we're doing for that. Until next time, take care.